With the application of the base coat now complete, we're ready to move on to the application of the sealant and edge coat for the sheet overlaps and the edge coat alone for the sheet edges. Base coat should be at least touch dry before continuing. If the base coat has been left without edge coat for any length of time, then it will need to be lightly keyed and wiped with Giromax panel wipe before proceeding. As with the base coat, the sealant and top coat application will be affected by temperature. No application should take place in temperatures below 5 degrees. Any lower and there's a risk of ice forming on the substrate, which will prevent the long-term adhesion of the products. For the sheet overlaps, the application of the sealant and edge coat uses a method called wet on wet. This means they are worked on at the same time. The sealant is gun applied along the overlap. You must ensure that the leading edge on the top sheet is fully covered and the sealant continues down onto the lower sheet, producing complete seal between the two. Once that's done to a certain distance, for example 1 meter or a tube's worth, then the edge coat is applied whilst the sealant is still wet. The edge coat is brush applied and used to blend the sealant over the top and bottom sheets to form a fillet. This is done by brushing the edge coat over the sealant from above and below the joint to create a speed bump like effect over the top sheet, ensuring it's fully obscured. The resultant fillet should be finished off smoothly and not too high that it causes a dam which would enable water to collect behind it. It's a skill to get the balance just right. There should be sufficient sealant applied to ensure that the leading edge cannot be seen so that the overlap seal will not split. If this occurs, it will allow water back into the overlap by capillary action, hold it in, and corrosion will reoccur. It's quite common to need a more liberal bead of sealant than originally thought. One way of achieving this is cutting down the tip on the tube slightly further than you would do normally. The application of edge coat should then be continued by brush or roller, and you will need to fully obscure the base coat and extend the coverage by a further 5 to 10 mm beyond the line of the base coat and therefore onto the clean existing coating. The edge coat should be applied to a minimum of 206 microns wet film thickness, which will produce a resultant dry film thickness of at least 200 microns. Check this reading is correct using a wet film thickness gauge. This should be applied in a single coating and not using several thinner coats. A neat, even line should be kept. This may be aided by the use of masking tape if required, but this should be removed before the application is cured to avoid damage. The application should not be feathered away, as this would reduce the thickness of the product. For sheet edges, the same process is used, just omitting the sealant application. The edge coat is brush or roller applied over the base coat. Again, it should fully cover the base coat and encapsulate the sheet ends completely, as well as extend the coverage by a further 5 to 10 mm beyond the line of the base coat. Tape can be used if required. At low application temperatures, the edge coat will begin to thicken and become more viscous. In order to minimalise this, tins should ideally be stored in such a way that keeps them warmer, for example in a vehicle or by wrapping something around them. If the edge coat becomes unworkable, a small amount of Giromax thinner can be added. You will need to pour this small amount, around about an egg cupful, into the top of the edge coat tin. You'll then want to work this in and then continue with the application. Repeat as necessary until you have a workable product. The addition of the thinner will increase the thickness at which the edge coat should be applied to achieve the required dry film thickness. Edge coat can be applied in the wet, however you'll find it harder because the water will create resistance against the application and it will take more effort to apply it uniformly. Application during heavy rain should be avoided since this will create a pitted effect on the application. This is an aesthetics issue only and is generally not detrimental to the overall integrity of the application. On thinner gauge roof sheets, it's also possible that a gap at the overlap between the sheets will be larger. This could mean you'd use significantly more product, especially sealant. To help mitigate this, you can use stitching or tech screws to go through the edge of the sheet overlaps to pull them together and give a little bit of extra strength before starting product application. Ideally, work should be carried out starting from a position furthest from the point of access first and then working back towards it. This will prevent you walking back and forth over the areas you've already treated before the application is fully cured. This will reduce the chances of splits occurring during this time and causing any unnecessary damage.